It's not just the abuse that was happening behind closed doors. It's that Maine's Department of Health and Human Services was as involved as they were, and cases were still closed leading up to her death.
Marissa didn't need to die. Logan Marr didn't need to die. But the reason they did is because the department didn't do their job. Every group we met with, whether it was a foster group or whether it was caseworkers, they all were worried about retaliation from the department. The department has this reputation, and well earned, that you speak against them and they're going to come after you. I hated to use the word corruption because by nature I'm not a grenade thrower, but there really was corruption if you look at that definition and see what was happening there, and it was accepted. You had the two most important days of your life. Number one, the day you're born. Number two, you discover why. And I discovered why in 2001. In 2001, I had been
You've already dropped tennis in the mature gesture, acceptance of the inevitable need to get to golf at our age. When did you drop, and what hurt the most when you let go?
I dropped when I was 25.
Oh, shut up.
Because I realized that that really wasn't something that I could really get good at, or even maybe enjoy for that reason. So, and I always needed somebody else to be available, and
a court,
going to golf and running and all those things you can do by yourself if you have to, which I usually end up doing.
You did you get in your head playing tennis too?
Yeah, I mean, it was too much. It was too much for me to. It was too much, and also the logistics, as I say, always having to find somebody and.
Right. And running, you don't need anything. You get your sneaks.
I can change that schedule last minute and nobody cares.
We were just saying earlier, I have never lost an argument running.
Absolutely.
And I sound great.
Yep.
You know, I make really poignant points, and tennis, you got too many. Golf, there's witnesses. We don't want that.
Yeah, people watching and laugh at you and make fun of you and that kind of thing. So that's
so we both gonna go. We're gonna be like those guys in the '80s doing the marathon with the beer can on the helmet. Absolutely. I'm ready to do it if you'll do it.
Listen, if I can do that, then I've made a hit. I'm gonna be fine. No complaints.
And we're in Maine, so we can find cold water and shrink those knees and hips right back up. So. Hell with those middle-aged cycling clubs and all their gear. God,
that's true. I totally agree. I mean, no sailing.
They look so cool, but I'm not threatened. Anyway, Bill, you're a legend, but I want to get to that yet. I really want to get to how. Well, I do want to get to it. I want to get to what child services is such a unspoken, undiscussed topic. Partly intentionally, the state kind of blocks information for good reason. Where in your long career as an educator and then as a state leader, like when did you hook into child services? When did you get a peek at it? What got you going?
That's a great question, because Mark Twain said, you had the two most important days of your life. Number one, the day you're born. Number two, you discover why. And I discovered why in 2001. In 2001, I had been Secretary of State. I'd done all that. I'd been in the House and the Senate and done those things. Even ran for governor once when I thought I had all the answers, didn't have any. So it was one of those things where it kind of just stumbled onto me, my why I was born. And that is, it was January 31st, 2001, when a little girl, 5-year-old girl, Logan Marr in Chelsea, Maine, who was murdered by her foster mother. And her foster mother was also a caseworker, which, as you know, caseworkers are investigating people, and they're supposed to also be social workers. Well, in this case, I found after the tragic death. By the way, Sally Schofield was the mother, was the foster mother, and what she did was she was going to prove that this little girl who had problems because she was in a drug-infested environment by her mother and other people. So what she did was she acted out a lot, and so what Sally Schofield said in court, that she was going to make sure this kid, she could take care of her. She wasn't any kid that she couldn't handle. So what happened was, she one day, Logan was having a bad day, and she put her down in the basement in a high chair and duct taped her in with 42 feet of duct tape. Putting the duct tape over her face, her head, her hair, her arms, her legs, everything. So she was really secured tightly, scared the heck out of her, of course. Faced her against a concrete wall, put a rope up and dragged a blanket over the rope to make a curtain. So she was boxed right in. And she just lost. You can't blame the little girl. She was just frightened to death. High chair tips over and she suffocates. And so she is charged with depraved indifference murder, and she ended up pleading out to manslaughter and served 17 years in prison. But what struck me there, having been a teacher and knowing about a little bit about child abuse, but what struck me there was that the department, the people charged with taking care of her, ignored that because the foster mother, who was also a caseworker, was one of the team, one of the buddies, one of the good old girls.
Thin blue line.
Yeah, and so what happened was, when her mother was allowed to watch videos of her and talk with her with a live video, and Logan would say, "Sally hurts me, Sally hurts me," and the caseworker heard that. Other people who were working on from the department heard that. They did nothing. Because what are they going to do? This is one person, Schofield, somebody they knew and liked, and so she was again part of the team. So this is under the King administration, by the way. So I looked into this, and we found that there really was. I hated to use the word corruption because by nature I'm not a grenade thrower, but there really was corruption if you look at that definition and see what was happening there, and it was accepted. It was one of these.
And when you say corruption, you don't mean money passing back and forth,
No.
more of a culture of permissiveness or of acceptance kind of thing?
Yeah, a broken culture that was being hidden very, very well, and pretty much run internally the way the people there thought it was easiest and best for them to run it. So that was how I got started. And then when Baldacci, and so I kept on looking at the department. And then when Baldacci came in.
And at that time, were you state senator, or were you Secretary of State?
No, I'd finished Secretary of State. I was about to run for the Senate. And I wasn't elected to the Senate yet. I hadn't run yet. So, but I had been in the Senate.
But you were at that poking around phase.
I had a business, which I still do, which I had to run and all that kind of stuff. So what I found, and what John Baldacci, God bless him, he came in and he reorganized the department. He saw what was happening, and he made it the DHHS. It was just DHS for when he got elected. So he made it the Department of Health and Human Services, and he did a wonderful job reorganizing it, getting control of it. He received national awards and all that go with those. But then again, it got so big by the time he was his last 2 or 3 years that it got to the point where it was really not controllable. So we still had some problems there. Then LePage, now he's a Democrat. We've had an independent Democrat. LePage comes in as a Republican. And one of the things he wanted to do was reorganize HHS and fraud and abuse and all that goes with it. But in doing that, he laid off some folks, and many of the folks he laid off were caseworkers, people who worked the front line. And I don't think he realized, in all fairness to him, I don't think he was out there trying to hurt anybody. But under his administration, we had some of the most terrible child deaths. Because people, if you don't have you don't have enough people to run the system and have caseloads, and if you don't train them, then you just can't function. So everybody who was remaining had overloads. So I was serving on the Government Oversight Committee at the time, which is the investigative committee of the legislature. We meet year round, have subpoena power. It's the only committee that has that. So he come in one day and said, "Look, I realized after 2 bad deaths," you might have remembered the names, Marissa Kennedy, who was a 10-year-old girl
from Wiscasset, and
she was from Stockton Springs, and then
the other Stockton Springs.
Wiscasset was Kendall Chick, and those 2 girls, one died in 17, one in 18, and they were horrific because Marissa Kennedy, for example, her stepfather would beat her and her mother, by the way, would make her get on her knees on a tile floor, arms above her head, and they would beat her with a mop handle. This all came out in court, which is why, by the way, Jonathan, I attend all these homicide trials, because that's the only way I can get the complete answers to the questions. I can't rely on the media, nor should I, and I want to go find out myself. So at the trial, they made that very explicit. They showed her as her dead body. They showed what they had done. One day, the only visitation, by the way, even after complaints by the school system, I talked to the principal of the school, by the neighbors, the police department, and they would say, "Look, this little girl, we hear screaming at night. This little girl's somebody's got to come in and check this." So finally, they came in. They got somebody who could. Again, they were showed on caseworkers. They come in, and the caseworker said, "Well, and while she was there, she testified to this. While she was there, Marissa passed out." So she said, "Well, this is what's wrong?" And the stepfather, big hulky man. I mean, I stood within 6 feet of him, and I was almost scared to death. He's such a big man, and I can't imagine what she must have felt. But anyway, she said he was so charming, I couldn't imagine he would do anything bad. Well, he had beaten her so badly, she was almost dead. In fact, she said to her mother, "I think I'm dying." And 3 days later, she was dead. So this is what got me going really into it. The Baldacci reorganization was exciting. Then when we got into this part here where we found out that this kind of abuse is going on, and we also found that the department, Office of Child and Family Services, they really pulled that curtain tight, because there was a lot of people who failed, and nobody wanted to expose anybody else, because it's like a domino. If one person gets exposed, then they felt sure that the whole thing was going to just spill open. So they were tight-lipped. And then the governor came into the Government Oversight Committee one afternoon. He said, "I want to add 70 new caseworkers because I realize we need them." Trouble is, caseworkers were getting $17.30 an hour back then, and number one. Number two, it takes a year and a half to get somebody trained. So this then gave before us, look, this isn't a partisan thing. This has happened on the Democrat, Republican, Independent. And then the saddest part, then we had another case. That was Kendall Chick, the little 4-year-old girl that was taken from her mother. And again, at the trial, they were given to his kinship, given to the grandfather. And so the grandfather, who had a girlfriend, worked at Bath Iron Works. And the grandfather said, "Look, I'll take her, but my girlfriend's going to be home and taking care of her day to day." What nobody knew is that she was the caretaker. The girlfriend was beating Kendall Chick unmercifully, way too often. Any time is too often, but I mean really beating the little girl. In fact, at the trial, they showed the indentation in her drywall where she had taken the baby and smashed her head into the wall and left the hair follicles and that sort of thing. I mean, her body was so beaten that when they showed it at the trial, her body was so beaten that you wouldn't even believe that it was someone who somebody would do that to some little innocent baby. So what happened there is that she too, the woman that did the beating, was found of depraved indifference murder. But the biggest problem there, which really kept me up at night, that little girl didn't need to die. Marissa didn't need to die. Logan Marr didn't need to die. But the reason they did is because the department didn't do their job. They never once visited Kendall Chick, for example, from February when she was placed there till December when she died. And one visit would have shown her body all beaten terribly. So it was really said to me. I got some people together and we talked about it. I said, this is crazy. This department is so well insulated that what we ended up with is they won't let you in. Even when the Government Oversight Committee tried to find answers and asked them to give them some data on trials, by the way, that had already been happening, already finished. And they said, no, we can't do that. So they were not cooperative at all. They haven't been cooperative. And their standard rule is, look, we can't share this because of confidentiality.
Do they, as I was going to get to, do they remain uncooperative? And is it because of the, double-edged confidentiality sword?
They remain that way, and they said, we'd like to, but we can't do it, federal and state law. Well, that's an exaggeration of the definition. So what we did this last year was ask, let's change the law then. If you think it's too strict, we'll change it so you can share things like when a little boy up in Bangor, Braxton Smith, was tied to his bed, tied to chairs, zip tied, by the way. and never was free. Always, and he was 10 years old. And so the question I asked to them, and the media asked, is, were you involved with the family? That's all. Don't tell me anything else. Were you involved? And I said this to the commissioner, and they said, we can't tell you because of confidentiality. Well, that's really not appropriate, and it's not an appropriate answer, and it's an insult to my intelligence and yours and anybody else who asked the question. So, come to find out, by the way, three of the mother, father, and grandmother were all charged with depraved indifference murder. That trial won't take place till March of 26. So, the problem again there is because they wouldn't answer, said they couldn't. We put a bill in. Senator Hickman put a bill in to say we're going to change the law. Here it is, and they testified against it. So they have no intent.
Testified against the law to make them share the information.
No, and there are other states.
Not a great look for them.
No, I mean, there are other states that do share basic information. Nobody wants put the attorney general at a disadvantage during the trial. Nobody wants that. But there's some basic questions they could answer. So that was really, that kind of.
At least after the trial.
Yeah.
Let me ask you. So you mentioned sort of, hey, not enough there, then too much there, then too much cut. What's the scope of work of these guys? I'll give you an example. I went and talked to some nursery schools, one where I have a kid, and I went and talked to them because they sent out an email to all the parents saying, please don't let your children color on the sign-in sheet, and please make sure you sign in every day and then sign out with your initials and the time, because the state comes to inspect it. I say, that's a really interesting, in a state that lost children because there wasn't enough resources to go to the, really troubled families' houses. Somebody's going to this well-heeled nursery school to look at the sign-in sheet. And when I got there, I learned also that if a kid says, Mommy hit me this morning when I wouldn't put on my, princess dress, or I wanted to dress as a princess and you're not allowed or whatever, and, they automatically are required to file a Department of Family Services report, and the DFS is automatically required to investigate this mom. Every single time, every single kid says, Mommy hit me when I didn't put on my dress or whatever it is. Is that the same agency? Is that, because I'm thinking, boy, maybe we change the reporting requirements on perfectly healthy, happy families that lapse or don't, or the kids got to imagine. Who knows? You'll never find out by going in at that point. This isn't a kid who's repeatedly said it. This isn't a kid with marks. This isn't a kid without sleep. And what the hell with the clipboards? Is there an allocation problem? Is it not big, little, but just, what have you found in terms of scope of work that these guys have?
Well, the scope is inconsistent, and this all comes back to the manager. And let me just tell you what we did. We wanted to do a real live poll, and to answer your question. And we wanted to make sure that we weren't interested in a academic poll to compare this to this or whatever. So we, as an after I formed Walk a Mile in Their Shoes in January 23, we got in a car and we drove around the state for 10 months. And we talked to frontline workers. We talked to daycare people, nursery school people, caseworkers, foster parents, law enforcement. We talked to every sheriff in this state. And we talked to them all, and we had two questions. What do you see as a problem with HHS when it comes to your particular role? And what's the solution? By the way, the solutions were very common sense. They weren't that complex at all. So we did that for 10 months. We come up with a report. And we put it all together. The report, by the way, I happen to have a copy here. It's on our website. It's called Unsupported. And we released that in December of 23. 2 days after we released that, the director of OCFS resigned and left the state.
Right. I remember that. I remember that departure.
Yeah. And his name was Todd Landry. And he left because he knows everything that we got was all true, because it came from his employees. Came from the foster parents he works with. It came from all those areas, daycare and others. So he knew exactly what was coming up, and his management, nothing against it. And we never asked for anybody to resign. We knew where the problem was, but he just did that on his own.
You pulled a Harry Truman. You didn't give him hell. You gave him the truth.
This looks like hell.
Truth may have given him hell.
So
let me go back. Hold on. I screwed up here because When did Walk a Mile get born? So you had this, you're a candidate or a candidate brewing. You discover this incredible bad event. You dig in. Then you're actually an elected official. When does Walk a Mile get born, and what triggers that, and where is that today?
Walk a Mile was born in January of 23 when I left the Senate.
Got it.
So, and I
So
realized,
you said, I'm going to pick this piece up and keep going.
yeah, and I realized that I hadn't been that successful in the Senate. We got some things passed, and we got some bills like the bill that would take out OCFS from that huge bureaucracy of 3,500 employees and make it stand by itself in a separate department so it can become visible, become transparent, and the press can see it, we can see it, anybody can do it. Right now, you can't get to them. They will not let you get to that office. So that's what so I realized that maybe I can do more outside. I had turned out anyway. So that's when I formed this Walk a Mile. I couldn't leave it. I couldn't walk away from it. I had too many reruns of the trials I'd been to and seeing what went on. So as a result of that, we got ourselves organized. 501c3. We're not a political at all, and we can't be, nor do we want to be, but we can expose what's going on. And we found out that exposing these problems and coming up with some real good solutions to the problems that are stated by those who know and live it every day, we knew that we could make a difference. And by the way, every group we met with, whether it was a foster group or whether it was caseworkers, they all were worried about retaliation from the department. The department has this reputation, and well earned, that you speak against them and they're going to come after you. And they did that in many, many cases that we were involved with. And so, I mean, that in itself is a poor management foundation. And when you rely on, I'm going to get you if you speak up. In fact, foster parents would tell us that they didn't dare to speak up. And if I'm going to talk to you as a foster parent, please don't tell the department my name that I talked to you. So that's what we're dealing with. We come up with the solutions identified to each area. And those solutions, again, they're not genius stuff at all. It's just common sense. And so what we're hoping is the next governor, whoever it may be, and we're going to try to talk to all of them if they will talk to us, because I'll give them an hour's tutorial and say, here's what we found, here's why, here's what you can do. Our solutions may or may not be appropriate, but they're a place to start. All of that sort of thing. And so if they don't take that on as a number one or number two or number three or whatever priority, at least mention it, then we know nothing's going to happen. Because Janet Mills, who, by the way, is a friend of mine, she asked me to nominate her for Attorney General when she first ran, and I did that. But she hasn't said a word about these 148 kids that have died during her term. 148. And I know I know the numbers, and I know each year. For example, in 2019, there were 19 deaths. 2020, there were 12 deaths. 2021, there were 34 deaths. 22, there's 32 deaths, and 23, 26.
Now,
So,
Bill, what's the difference between these giant numbers? Feels like the Gaza Strip here, and the names that we know, the Wiscasset and the Cold Springs, and what is it that these are, include accidental? I mean, those are giant numbers.
those deaths are not just homicides, but many of them are, and the ones that are the most hideous.
So these could be a 17-year-old who dies of a fentanyl overdose or something.
Yeah, but they have categories like accident, unidentified. That's always suspicious, because that means they've got to a point where they don't want to say anymore. They don't want to give out information. Then the actual homicides, manslaughter, accidents, that kind of thing. But in many of those cases, and remember, in Maine, we have independent child welfare ombudsman. And this person's job, and she is Al Berry, she is a very, very tenacious person, but she investigates as many of these cases that are reported to her that she can. She picks the worst ones. Last year, she did 80, and that's about what she does each year. And she'll determine if the department failed and why, if they did. 4 years in a row, Jonathan, 4 years in a row, they've reported the same thing. I'm unfortunately have to say that the department has not improved their ability to keep kids safe in a safe environment. So,
all right, I'm going to give you a lightning round so we can focus here.
Okay.
I'm going to give you, this is sort of like yes, no, in terms of like on your radar. First is culture of the staff.
The staff is overworked, overloaded, and untrained.
But what about the culture? What about is there still that thin blue line? Like, I don't want to share.
There is, because they're fearful. Many of them are fearful that there's going to
Can't
be
do my job. No one
Yeah.
believes it, but I know I can't. So what am I? I'm a dead man no matter which. Kind of learned
Yeah,
helplessness.
kind of, and also remember, this includes newbies, people right out of college,
Right.
and
Make it
thrown into
17.
they're thrown into a situation where they don't know what they're really doing. They're not trained as well as they should be, nor should they be going in by themselves anyway. And we propose solutions to that. I won't get into them now, but so yeah, that's the culture.
Okay. So that's culture. Let's keep going. Resource allocation, meaning forget the amount of resources, where the resources are spent.
The resources are poorly spent, number one, because they should be spent on the problems that have been identified.
And they've got just a basis documentation
Right.
load that
And
doesn't
that
help them.
department has more money. And don't forget that what makes them so powerful is because they have all these subcontracts out there. I mean, more than you know and can count. And these some names you recognize, some names you wouldn't, but they're out there. So every time there's an accusation made about the department, they'll bring up 2 or 3 of these kind of groups that they're funding or providing some funding to, and they'll defend them. So this is a part of the culture too that is deceptive, and it really prevents the honest answers to be coming from the department.
How about total resources? Like the budget's 12 million and it should be 20, or
Plenty of resources,
plenty of money.
They got an $11 billion plus budget, and it's probably going to reach closer to 12 when they leave there next week.
What?
And
No,
yeah,
I mean just the family services.
oh no, I'm talking the whole budget. My point is,
$12 billion
because the whole
for
budget-
family services. They ought to be able to squeak it out.
my point on that is that there's so much money there they've never
Right. But
And
in the agency itself,
Yeah.
do you feel like the total dollars in play, whether they're spent properly or not, is that the right number?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And the bills might
You're down to culture and allocation. Let's keep going with the lightning round, then we'll double click here. Foster parent engagement.
foster parents are not supported the way they should be. They long to get some consistency. Oftentimes kids will be dropped off with them and with little or no information about the child itself. The foster parents feel frustrated. Oftentimes they're not paid on time. And by the way, foster kids, one of the things we found out is that foster children going to daycare, the state doesn't always pay them. And so the daycare providers, they have to say, I can't take foster kids anymore, or they'll try to write it out until they get paid. Betsy Grant out of Trenton, Maine, she had a Tiny Tykes place, and she testified before the committee saying they haven't paid me in some cases for more than a year. I mean, and that's difficult for a small business to take care of that. So yes, that's the answer to.
So just to like, what's a dishonor and insult and injury. Like, it's one thing to not pay. It's another thing to not pay much. It's another thing to just not pay it. What's it like becoming? Is there a long list of people who want to be foster parents? Is there a long list of foster parent openings with no applicants?
The people are dropping. They don't want to play anymore. And a lot of foster parents. We have one of our volunteers. She is a foster parent, a biological parent, and a adoptive parent. And she's been in the system a long time, and she knows they often come to her and ask for advice. But she knows full well so many of these foster parents would talk with her, and she talks with them with that network, that they're dropping out because they're not being supported, and they're worried. I mean, they bring kids to them, and they really don't know where what their background is. Oftentimes, or if they're on medication, sometimes they're not told, and so that's a real problem for foster parents. They feel vulnerable.
Got it. Last one that I can think of, add a category if I've missed one: technology and sort of operating infrastructure.
The technology is terrible. They have a computer system called Katahdin.
Katahdin? Mount Katahdin?
That's what it's called, Katahdin.
Named after a historic mountain of paperwork that no one.
Well, it's done put together by an out-of-state company, and I'll tell you, it's failed in so many different ways. It's so bad that guardian ad litems have talked to us, say, look, we can't use it because it's dysfunctional. It takes too much time and it doesn't give us the results we need. Caseworkers said the same thing. We spend time on this thing to put information in, and sometimes it doesn't work, doesn't come out. And people have complained about this Catardin system time and time again. And yet they say they're getting better, but if you talk to people who use it every day, they'll say it really isn't. So that Catardin system is really the heart of the whole information resource structure for everybody who works out of there. And if that's not functioning at a basic level, then that's not going to work for anybody. And the results are going to be terrible, such as doing court documents and other sorts of things. So it's really one of those things where if you've said what's one of the things we need to have run correctly, most of the time it would be that computer resource system, and it's not working.
That's interesting. And so what you've done this incredible work. You've done this incredible listening tour. You've got these areas. Let's fix it. Let's in the era of Trump, let's be dictator for 3 days. I'm just going to be dictator for 3 days. No, let's not. That's annoying. We've already tried that. Let's do 3 sets. Let's say what executive orders should a new governor make that's within the appropriate executive order purview, an emergency or an administrative change? What bills should be presented? And is there a relationship with the federal government that should change to make this go better?
Couple answers here. Actually, what should happen, it's not going to take a lot. It takes some legislation. The new governor coming in, just like I said, just if Janet would say today, we're going to solve this before I leave, it would be solved. But you'd have to open it up and expose all the innards, which is nobody really wants to do, because then everybody gets blamed, including
So not an executive order, but a sort of an executive reveal.
Yeah, if I were going to be governor, or if you would, I would say to you, take it apart, open it wide open, pull out OCFS, put it in its own area, and let's focus on that and let's get it fixed. We know what the problems are. We know how to get them fixed. So but you have to admit there's a problem first and foremost. Secondly, you've got to be willing to open the thing wide open. And that's going to show some failures by people that are not wanting to have their failures shown, believe me. And they're going to be high level people. I mean, when the commissioner resigned, she left pretty quickly when we were in the middle of doing our next study. So I think that it's not a huge problem to be.
I wonder what she would say if you got her alone with a glass of wine right now, wherever she is. She'd be a good listening tour.
Yeah, she would. I wish she could go on with us. I wish she would have been. But in all respect, she has a lot of personal problems in terms of dealing with people, personnel issues. So that was not one of her comfort zones. So as a result of that, her staff oftentimes had some issues. But the real issue here is, Jonathan, I can't say it clear enough. I know, but the real issue is all we got to do is admit there's a problem. And now let's take it apart. Let's look at the caseworkers. What are we going to do to make their jobs better and more efficient? What are we going to do to the foster parents? All simple. How about supporting them? How about when they have issues? How about we have somebody assigned to go deal with those issues and not say to them, you handle those yourself. And if you complain, by the way, we won't be happy. So it's an attitude. It's a management. And if you've done management, I've managed businesses, I've managed government, and you've done, I'm sure, your own business managements and other sorts of things. And it's just a matter of knowing how to deal with people.
What about, while we're on management, everybody's favorite topic on management is, especially with the state, is union. Is there a special union for this? And do they have their own shop rules and blah, blah, blah? Or
Well, they have a union. And by the way, you might be interested if you didn't catch it. The union with OCFS and with the caseworkers in particular, they're part of the regular union for the state employees. But back in February, OCFS employees, 145 of them, voted no confidence in the new director that was running the show for after Landry left. And that was revealing in many ways. Number one, they said the reason that they had no confidence vote is they didn't think the kids were safe, as the ombudsman kept telling us, and they didn't think they were safe going to these homes by themselves, and nobody was willing to change that. So when they made those comments and made that vote and released it in the press, the governor came out within hours and said how that passage of that no confidence was inappropriate. The director's doing a great job.
You never know when a union votes no confidence. It could be that somebody's about to peel the rock off the potato bugs, or it could be that the guy's toxic. It's hard to decide.
But the striking thing there, Jonathan, is the point. She had never once spoken about any of those kids that were killed, murdered, or the inefficiency of the department.
Regardless of her intention, the user interface was a little.
Yeah, I mean, she jumped quickly to protect her and defend her department, which is fine. But she didn't mention why they had the vote. And number two, she's never spoken about the kids who had died and shouldn't have.
Is there legislation that's, you said the budget's there, the allocation is wrong. I suppose the executive branch can change the allocation without legislation. Is that right? Or is there bills that got to go up?
Well, it's half right. I mean, they'll tell you that, well, we put $1 million here, $5 million there, but none of that money was ever pinpointed to address a problem or problems. And that's it. It was just tossed in the pot. And by the way, every time that the department went to the Appropriations Committee, which I chaired, I understand how that works. They go to the Appropriations Committee and say, we need this, this, and this for these, so these kids will stop dying. And they got everything they asked for, including 70 or 80 new positions. So they get what they want because legislators want to do what's right. Frankly, if I'm going to be blunt, my party, the Democrats, are not good at being willing to step on toes to tell the truth. And we all agree we're going to do that no matter what. And I think I know I've stepped on the governor's toes by saying what I say, but what I say is true. And I think that's what legislators are feeling. Oh, I don't want to come out against Germany because I don't want to make the governor look bad or the commissioner or whatever it may be. But yeah, that's all low priorities for as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you got to make people uncomfortable.
Yes,
it's really important. People will never feel comfortable until they've hit a boundary with you, and that's going to make them uncomfortable. And if you're not ready for that, then you end up with slosh. What about the feds? The feds did the study, and 95% of cases not completely, followed up on, et cetera. But first thing that came to my mind were all these crazy things that the department has to do that doesn't help anybody, doesn't protect. What was your sense of the federal study, and what change would we have with the federal government relationship if we could change it any way we wanted?
Well, that Family Practices Act has a lot of things in it that's based on ideology. And I think that's one of the problems. And one of the problems, by the way, is the Fed says, you reunify. We want you to reunify. We believe in reunification. If a kid has to come out, we want you to put them back as soon as you can. So, and by the way, if you do that and you reach a 40% reunification level, we'll give you some bonuses. So that's when that leads to cases.
Oh, so they have an incentive to put people back into the jaws. That's not an alligator. That is a moist dinner table. Yeah.
And that's what cases like Maddox Williams, a little 3-year-old boy that his mother abandoned for 23 months. And she was a depraved person herself, a convicted felon, and beat her kids and did all this thing. She wanted that boy back because that meant money. So the department said, okay, you've abandoned him. And the state law says if you abandon a kid for 12 months, you've lost rights to the kid. So she said, I want him back. He's living with his grandmother, Victoria Vos, happy, loving, safe. She gets the department over the objections of everybody, gives him back because they want to reunify. And so they give them back, and he's dead in 3 months. They say she will kill him. She will kill him. And she she testified, and her mother testified against her in court and said she would make him lie on the couch, facing the back of the couch, because he didn't want to look at his effing ugly face because it reminded him of his father. And he died, Jonathan. I mean, that was the saddest trial I've been to, maybe the saddest. They've all been sad, but he died because she stomped him. She weighed 200 pounds. He weighed 27. And she would stomp him on a regular basis. And the last time she did it, she burst his pancreas, his liver, and he actually fractured his spine. And as she was beating him over the 3 months she had him before he died, she would cover his face with these little tattoos, that are little cartoon tattoos, so that people wouldn't see the bruises. At one point, she knocked two of his back teeth out. She hit him so hard. And her mother also testified at one point.
But we did get that unification bonus from Uncle Sam.
Yeah, they got the reunification done.
Mazel tov to us.
I mean, that's what really keeps me awake at night,
Oh.
saying, if we'd have just not put him back, he'd be alive. He'd be in first grade.
Last question, and then we'll wrap. Then we'll all go throw up, and then we'll thank you, and then we'll wrap. There are a lot more cops than there are child services workers. What do you think about a certification that Maine cops could get to be a visitor, reporter, record updater, so we just have more heads in the game?
They should be part of the system. In fact, when we met with the sheriffs I mentioned earlier, one of their recommendations for solving the problem was don't make us go to Augusta and talk with somebody in a cubicle when we've got a case at 2:00 in the morning. Make our service center local, so they know us, we know them. It was a common sense solution.
Hey, go through the training, $3 an hour on top of whatever you're making, and we just quadrupled the
Right.
number of visits possible.
You're going to communicate with somebody you know and trust. They're going to communicate with you. Therefore, there'll be fewer kids taken to a hotel and kept there for weeks, where the caseworkers have to go babysit them at the hotel. So let's do this so that law enforcement involve them. That's when we recommended overall teams. With every case should have a team. They don't all have to be in the house at the same time, but they're a resource team for everybody else.
That's great. Bill Diamond, one of the few who knows exactly why they were born as well as when, creator of Walk a Mile and gadfly of the most important evidence of Maine's humanity, which is how we treat our most vulnerable. Thank you for joining Maine for Keeps.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate this time, because exposure is what's going to make a difference. I really appreciate you having me with you.
It was really memorable, dude. Thanks for tuning in to Maine for Keeps. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on social media, click and share with your friends, or get on to mainforkeeps.com. If you have ideas for new content or podcast guests, or if you'd like to give us some money to support the effort, be sure to click and send. We're at team@mainforkeeps.com, and I'm at jb@mainforkeeps.com. Thanks. See you soon.